this workshop, which is from the BASE platform. We are happy to inform you today a little about remote access to bathymetric data using modern satellite capabilities and crowdsourcing. And as you can see here, we are here with quite a lot of experts. Before they will briefly introduce you, I'd like to give 2 technical notes. First of all, please remember to use the HD quality in your YouTube settings. The quality will be far better, and it's much of help to follow the upcoming slides. So you can do this by selecting the settings option of your YouTube video and setting it to highest quality. The second is we are collecting questions, which we will comment and reply to in the end of this meeting. So if you have any questions along the line, just send us an email, and the email address is workshop@base-platform.com. So just send us emails, we are collecting them and reply to them later on. So before continuing, I'd like to introduce you to who's around, who will be able to answer your questions following on.
Hello, my name is Martin Verlaan, and we work on data merging and tidal modeling.
Hi, my name is Freddie Khan, and we work on the business planning for BASE platform.
Hi, I'm Tim Thornton, and I'm dealing with the crowdsourcing side of things.
I'm Knut Hartmann, and I'm expert for satellite data, for optical satellite data analysis.
Hi, I'm Suwin He, and we are responsible for the development of the site and deliver the system.
Hello, I'm Stefan Wiele, and we are dealing with the bathymetry from synthetic aperture radar.
Hi, I'm Bernard Martinez, and we are responsible for all the deep water products based on bathymetry technology.
All right. So I'll give you a little overview of what you can expect in the next approximately an hour. Excuse me. So first of all, we'll give an introduction to the BASE platform project. And this agenda is the introduction to the space bathymetry, providing quite a lot of insight to all of the techniques which we apply here and which form the products which we provide. We'll give a live demonstration of the geo-portal, which is online and helps you to query and request bathymetric data worldwide. We give a live demonstration of a GIS integration, which shows you how easy it is to load these data into GIS, to visualize them and to analyze those data. And last but not least, we are happy to have this question and answer session where we, as I said before, collect your questions and reply to them in this webinar. Again, the email address where you can send emails to is below on all the slides. So please send any emails to workshop@baseplatform.com. This presentation will give you an overview of what BASE platform actually is, who we are, why there is a huge need for having a service such as ours. We'll give insight into the technology and methods which we apply. We highlight the products and services which we offer. And last but not least, provide an overview of the online portal and the data access to our data. So first of all, what is BASE platform? So BASE platform is a portal which offers bathymetric data from shore to deep water. This is a project which foundation was co-funded by the European Commission. We have 3 main objectives. First of all, we obviously want to improve the bathymetric data availability worldwide. And we do this by using new methods, new innovative methods, which include remote sensing methods and crowdsourcing. We want to provide these data as easy as it can get through a portal, through integration into GIS. And if you like, as a last point, we have a scientific ambition to improve the state of the technology in terms of algorithm development and the workflows. So the consortium of BASE is formed by commercial entities and research centers. And all of us, we represent one of these entities here. So we have the German Aerospace Center, where we're happy to be here today and hold this workshop. The German Aerospace Center is a project coordinator, and they represent the experts for radar. We have EOMAP, which is actually the expert for shallow water bathymetry using optical satellite data. We have ISATSAT doing the altimetry bathymetry. SmartCom are the experts for crowdsourcing bathymetry from UK. We have Deltaris, the worldwide known experts for hydrodynamic modeling from the Netherlands. We have Find Mapping with great expertise here in creating online portals from UK. And last but not least, we have Maris, also from the Netherlands. They are very experienced here in dissemination and business development activities. So why have we formed actually? So we understood that there's a high need for bathymetric data. And this high need is because there are quite a lot of activities offshore, which includes engineering, navigation, hydrodynamic modeling, flood forecasts, and you can go on and on with all these applications. And all have in common, obviously, that they need information on the seafloor topography, which is a bathymetry. So and this one is a little in contrast to what kind of information are available. So just to give you some figures, the last IHO report, which I put here on the right-hand side, and you can really go into detail in this report. It says that more than actually 80% of the world ocean, or 50% of the shallow water zone, is unsurveyed to border survey standards. So there's quite a lot of data gaps, and this is where we come in with our service. So to understand what we do, it's good to understand what is currently done, what is available, and I guess all of you will know that the current way of surveying new bathymetric data is either done by ship or by aerial platforms. So either acoustic or LiDAR methods. As you can easily understand, they require, well, equipment, labor, and they take time. So they are actually very good methods, but also very expensive methods. If you don't have the budget to get new surveys, you have to rely on existing data sets. And you often do to work on different topics, actually. So a world-known data set is, for example, the JEPCO data set, which covers the entire world, but is very coarse in resolution. And so is EMODNet for Europe. Another data set where you can access bathymetric data are nautical charts. So either in paper or digital format. But those charts obviously rely on survey data, so they are very good if they are very modern and if the scale is good enough. Sometimes it's the case, sometimes you will have challenges of using nautical charts for your purpose. So what we can offer with the analysis from satellite data, from the crowdsourced data, is the generation of most recent bathymetric data grids. We can make those, as I said before, easy accessible through the portal. And we can go there where survey vessels, for example, can't go with satellites, which means we can access inaccessible areas and, if you like, do remote surveys. So it's actually an ideal data set for pre-planning, reconnaissance survey, and high frequent mapping. Briefly described the concept of what we do here within BASE platform. I mentioned earlier that we have here an expertise of different satellite value adders. And we apply different techniques using different kinds of data. And we combine all these. And the beauty of all this is that there are quite a lot of synergies. So if you see this figure and see that optical bathymetric data can be derived from satellites for the shallow water zone, whereas the next deeper depth region, if you like, can be derived from SAR data, and the deep water ocean is the altimeter bathymetry, which can provide data. And again, another beauty here is crowdsourced bathymetry. They cover all these depth regions and can fit in very well and merge these data layers very nicely. A challenge which we always run into when we use satellite data is the reference to a certain datum. So a certain datum such as lowest astronomical tide, mean sea level, and so on. Which brings us to the point that we need expertise on vertical datum and to be able to convert it from one vertical datum to another. So here we are with the expertise of the hydrodynamic models, which gives exactly this information. So this is the general scheme of how base platform is formed. In the next slides, I will introduce you to all of these single techniques, which I described earlier, starting now with the optical satellite data, which are for the shallow waters. They're using optical satellite data of different missions, different satellite missions, and there are quite a lot of missions which can be used for this purpose. Describing the technology very briefly, we imply inversion methods, modern inversion methods, which allows you to determine the water depths from the reflectance of the seafloor intensities at different wavelengths, different colors, if you like, which also gives you an impression that this technology is valid for depending on the water clarity. As an average, you can assume it's 1 to 1.2 times Secchi disk depths, which brings you up to a maximum of around 30 meters. We can provide horizontal resolutions of 2 to 50 meters, and the accuracy, a general accuracy statement is given here in 50 centimeter plus 10% depth for the vertical accuracy. So this is a brief specification of what optical satellite data can do for the shallow water. Price range here is very low if you compare it, especially if you compare it to other surveys, around 10 to 20 euro per square kilometer. If we go deeper into the water, the SAR method, if you like, is the next method which can be used to create bathymetric data. This one is based not using optical, but using SAR radar data, which can penetrate clouds and thus have some good advantages. The method itself is actually based on measuring the wavelengths and using the wavelengths information to provide information about bathymetric data. It can cover depth range from, not from shore, but from a depth range approximately 10 meter deep down to 70 meter. The spatial resolution is coarser than described before. It's roughly around 100 meter. And so are the vertical accuracies, which are a little coarser in the range of less than 5 meter vertical accuracy. And here's also an environmental limitation for these kind of data, which means it can be applied where the wave conditions allow. It comes with very cheap costs of €1 per square kilometer. Going even further into the ocean, we have information from altimetric data, which are actually a combination of measuring the sea surface level and detecting the gravity anomalies to be able to derive bathymetric depths for depth regions which are below 300 meter deep, down to the deepest point in the ocean. The horizontal resolution again is a little coarse. It's a 1 kilometer, but it covers the world oceans. The vertical accuracy here can be roughly assumed to be 100 meter. And obviously, limitations which we summarized here is what I mentioned before. It's not made for shallow water areas. The costs are even less than a cent per square kilometer. Crowdsourced bathymetric data is the next bigger product which we offer. It's not made from satellite data. It's, if you like, surveying the bathymetric data by a crowd of vessels which actively log their positions, and their depths. These data are then stored in the data logger, submitted to cloud where it's processed, quality checked, and interpolated, and provides bathymetric grids, typically for in a grid spacing of 32 meter, but it can be higher, especially there where you have a high density of ship tracks. The vertical accuracy here again is depending on the density of the ship tracks, can be actually better than 50 centimeter depth. And the limitation, which is worth to mention, that this method obviously is able to provide information where ships go, but not where ships don't go. The price range for this kind of service is again in the range from 1 to 10 euro per square kilometer. I mentioned earlier that the datum is an issue, can be an issue if we work with satellite data, and that we have the expertise here of Deltares, which bring in a global model which helps us to use the results of sea level modelings to transfer from different datums. So the model is a global model, and we use it to apply this datum shifts and the tides. Next slide here is just to give you an impression about the coverage of this global model and how we use it to convert from, for example, lowest astronomical tide to mean sea level. And the beauty, what we do here with all the technologies within base platform, is we offer a merge data set, which means we use all these data, merge them together seamlessly, and provide these as a data set, which is far superb to what is available, currently available. So it comes with a grid spacing of roughly 50 meter. And the vertical accuracies obviously depend on the source data, but they will come in with the data set. So just to give you an impression how these data, which are base platform data now, how they compare to other data set, which you might be used to. So above you see the JEPCO data. So JEPCO is a free and open data set for the world ocean, the bathymetry for the world ocean. And below is a same area created from the base platform data, using all the data sets which I mentioned earlier. And directly from this visual comparison, you can see that the base platform data includes quite a lot of more detail in the shallow waters, but also in the intermediate and deeper water regions. An outlook to the geo-portal as it is right now. It provides you access to query bathymetric data, to purchase these data, to get access to help and support, and obviously it provides you with further readings. So I will not go into detail into these topics. My colleague Sui Win is happy to do so. And Sui Win will give you now an introduction of the portal and also of the integration of this data in GIS. Thank you very much so far. Again, my reminder, don't forget to send us questions to workshop@baseplatform.com. Thank you.
Thank you for your introduction, Knut. Okay, so what I'll be doing today is to give you a demonstration of how to actually use the base platform system, and then just to demonstrate how easy it is to load the data within GIS systems or to integrate with other layers that you may already have. So before I do my demonstration, I just have to quickly go through some PowerPoint slides. So the first is what is base platform. You would have already heard about this, so mine will be a lot shorter. A dummy's guide to the base platform. Everybody needs one. How to use base platform data, and then I'll go on to the demonstration. So what is base platform? Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail. So in a nutshell, it's a way for us to allow you to quickly and easily get access to data. Yeah. So once you've got access to it, then obviously you can use it within your own studies. The process for getting the data is done easily in 4 steps. First, you find the area you're interested in. You draw the area of interest. You select the areas that you want to purchase, and then you just request your order. It's simple like that. Okay, so I've got my data now. What do I do with it? Well, the usual way is you load into a GIS or other systems where you can view mapping data. In my particular demonstration, I'm going to be using QGIS. I will also show you an example of this data being used in ArcGIS Online with other data from the Jersey area. And of course, there's nothing stopping you using any other GIS systems that are available. So let's move on to the site demonstration. Okay, so here we are at the base platform website. And you will notice that there is a lot of information here. And some of it, it's things that you should just read through and see how this data can be a benefit to you. I'm going to just point out a few specific things here. So under the data product, coverage. Okay, this useful map here shows you the areas that we can get data for. And by turning off or turning on the different options, you can see the coverage areas where it is possible for the base platform consortium to get you data for. Okay. Moving on, there's the pricing. This is always quite useful. And this is a summary of the current pricing for data from the base platform. Okay. There are 2 types at the moment. There's off-the-shelf data and there's custom data. Off-the-shelf data is data that we already have in-house, which can be made available almost immediately. Custom data is where things are a bit more complex because we actually have to go out and survey the data and then capture it. Now, as this is a EU-funded project, we do have a number of trial areas where if you've registered, you can already download some data to have a go. So we can look at Channel Islands. Okay. Again, here's some more information about Channel Islands. And you see here that if you registered, you'll probably be able to access some data. So I'll just quickly register. Well, I won't register, I'll just log in just to show you. Okay, here we go. In, I'll go back to my data products, my trial area. If I look back at my Channel Islands, You notice now, I can download this data, and it's all available for free, and you could do whatever you want with it, pretty much, within reason. Okay, now let's look at the ordering process. So I'm going to the Order tab. Okay, so what you have here, you've got your basic map window, and you have your basic mapping tools. You've got your zoom in, your zoom outs. Yeah, you can use your mouse to drag, and you can quite simply use these tools to define the area you want. Okay. There are other options here, of course. You can use the search bar here, and what you can do, you can enter, if you know them, you can enter the longitude and latitude corners, or even port names. So for example, Los Angeles. And there go to Los Angeles. And there we are. Here we are at Los Angeles. Let's go to somewhere else. Let's go to Hong Kong. Okay, and there we are at Hong Kong. Okay. Another option is using what free words. Yeah, this is a service that by using free words, you can pretty much find any location in the world. Now, this is in German because we're in Germany, but I presume it will be in language wherever you will be. But by using what free words, it can help you identify locations. Okay. So in my case, I'm looking for somewhere off St. Heliers, which is just off Jersey. Now, luckily, I actually know what was free words for it. So I'm going to type in aviation. Easiest. And Candid. A bit of luck. It takes me to where I expect it to be, which is just off Jersey in the Channel Islands. So I found my location, what I want. Now, how do I define my area? Here, you'll see two tools. You've got your polygon or your rectangle. I could quite simply just draw a rectangle around the area of interest and then proceed. Or actually, I think actually it's not quite right. And by using the edit tools, I can just adjust it accordingly. Yeah. There's also delete if it's not the area I want. Okay, but yeah, for my project, it's probably about right. I'm just going to go proceed. Okay, so I've defined my area of interest, which is around the Channel Islands, around Jersey. And what the systems now does, it searches all the available data sets that we have and see what matches and returns the information. So here we have the different data sets that are available for my area. So we have the crowdsource, we have the base combined, which is the merged. We have appenditure, obstacle, more crowdsource. Yep, there's lots, okay? And the ones I'm interested in, I can just easily just add to the order. In some situations, I might find actually what is listed is not what I need. Okay, so what I can actually do, oops, I can move my mouse further down. There we go. I can actually request a quote and then actually ask the different partners of the base platform, say, I need further information, give me more details or what else is available. So I can just send them a nice message asking, please provide additional information. Info. And I were to request it. So what I'm going to do now, I've requested a few layers and I've also asked for more information and I can just hit the proceed button. Now, all I do now here is I choose my file format. This is how I want to receive the data. So I've got the choice of GeoTIFF, ASCII, NetCDF, or something else. Okay, if I would like this as a web service, which is a different way to receive data, I can complete my registration details or my details so that they know who's made a request. Okay, and then I can send inquiry, sorry. And then that will message the partners about what I'm after. Now, if I actually have registered using the registry button, then I wouldn't need to complete my details here because that will be pre-populated and created. Now, currently, when you send inquiry, this does literally just send an inquiry to the partners. But in the near future, what would happen if you have registered, you would be able to purchase data automatically online using a credit card. Okay, so I've got my data, and now what I'm going to show is actually using this data within a GIS system. In my presentation today, I'm just going to use QGIS, which is an open source GIS system, which is openly available and you can easily download, really. Just type in QGIS in Google and you'll find it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is show you how easy it is to load this data and manipulate it a little bit. So before I start, let's get my data. I'm going to just add in some sort of reference data. Okay, I'm actually going to use in some chart data which I've obtained from OceanWise. So I can literally just drag and drop. And there we go. This is chart data from OceanWise. And if I just zoom in slightly more, I've got it of the Jersey area. I'm now going to start loading in some additional data which I've obtained from the base platform. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, the first one I'm going to load is the merged data set. So this is the combination of all the different data sets that are available in one data set. Again, I'll just drag and drop. And if I just wait a little bit, there we go. Now, one of the main advantages of this kind of data set is that it is raster data, but it has tile data. It's raster tile data. So it actually has intelligence or information behind it. In this case, it is height information. So what I can do within QGIS, I can go to properties. Okay, and I can actually style it based on the depth or the height information. I'm going to go to load styles, and I'm just going to use one I made earlier, or somebody made earlier. Okay, I'm just going to load it in. And there we go. And that is the data styled based on the height, which you can then start using for your own desktop studies. Now, you may find actually I am interested in specific heights. Okay, and the advantage of it is that I can actually manipulate accordingly. So again, I would just go to my properties. I'm going to select a specific depth I'm interested. In this case, I'm interested in between 25 and 20. I'm just going to make it black for ease of viewing. Then I can do OK. Just give it a little while. And there you go. And there you see the areas in black is the depth between 25 and 20. Okay. Once here, of course, I can also add in additional layers. So I'm going to open it on here. Okay. And again, if I zoom in a bit closer so you get a bit more details. Okay. Again, I can style this. Again, I'm going to cheat again because I've already got these pre-styled. Just wait for that to appear. And I'm just going to use a coastal range gradient. Now, I've used a couple of pre-created style sheets. If you guys want any of these, please just send us email and I'm sure we'll make these available to you. Hello? What happened? I was waiting. There we go. Okay, and this is just me styling it based on high information using predefined style sheets. Now, you guys can create your own and to just determine or highlight the kind of data you want. Okay, finally, what I'm going to do now is show you it being used within ArcGIS platform. Now, I've been kindly provided this project from a team that's currently working in Jersey, and it's mainly been provided by the sort of fishery, tourism, and port and harbor authorities from Jersey, as well as people who work with us here. Now, this is again showing the data you got from the base platform. Now, what I can do here is I can actually start adding additional layers or overlapping information to make it get more useful. I can add in conservation areas. Yeah, there goes, it highlights. Okay. If I really want to, I can add in the gap code just underneath, it probably appear underneath it. Yeah. So using that, I can actually easily compare the quality between the data I'm getting from the base platform and from GapCo. And then again, I can add in additional data, in this case, in linear support approach. And if I just zoom in a bit. Okay, there we go. Open the legend here as well, so you just see the little boots. You can see how easy it is to integrate base platform data with other GIS layers that you may have, say that you guys can use this for any of your studies or any projects that you have. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suiwin. So I will switch the screen again. So we are done with the presentations and the demonstrations, which we've prepared. We are very much looking to the next part of this workshop, which is the question and answer section, which is which comes right now. So anytime you are very much welcome just to send us other questions or any questions to our email address workshop@base-platform.com, and we will answer them. So we got a list of questions already, so I just hand it over to Tim. Tim, would you like to?
Yes, sure. I'm being the question master for the session. So as Note says, we're getting quite a few interesting questions in, but don't feel shy. Send us your questions and we'll try and address as many as we can. Firstly, one overall point outside of the technicalities of base platform, if you like. Yes, we will be making the presentation available online afterwards, both to those who've attended and also anybody who signed up for the webinar and hasn't been able to make it. But coming on to specific questions, we've had one on how our different solutions work in areas of highly turbid waters, so particularly the Persian or Arabian Gulf area, as an example. And I'll start off by handing this over to Note on the optical satellite bathymetry side.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, turbid water is obviously a challenge for optical satellite data because we rely on reflectance from the seafloor, which means we need to, if you like, we need to see the seafloor. The big beauty of what satellite images can offer is that there's an archive of satellite data which can be accessed and which can be evaluated for this kind of turbidity information. Which means if there is a seasonality in turbidity, and in the Persian Gulf or Persian Arabian Gulf, it is a turbidity, annual and seasonal turbidity, we are able to identify areas where we believe it's clearest water conditions, and we can use these image data to create bathymetric grids. So this is only one part of the answer. So there are locations which are highly turbid all the year, which will not allow to use optical satellite data to derive bathymetric data. So if so, there is a chance to use SAR data, so use the information on wavelength to create bathymetric data. This information will be a little coarser, but nevertheless, they will provide you quite good information. The next part of what is possible of doing, especially in river delta areas, you very often have a high tidal differences of several meter differences. So you can use actually a time series of satellite information to get information about the tidal range of, and so the tidal bathymetry of the tidal water range. And this again would come with the expertise of the modelers plus the analysis of the satellite data.
Okay, we've had another question on integrating our data with other survey data. And I think I'll pass you over for that to Martin, who's doing our merge data sets and can probably also talk just as easily about merging with other data sources and so on. So I'll pass you over to Martin.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So at the moment in the base platform, we are merging the data sets that are available and that Knut has described earlier in the presentation. The techniques that we use are quite general and could be used for integration with other data sets. We are actually at the moment also using a number of open source open data sets such as JEPCO and EMODnet as a backdrop to fill for any data gaps. If you have any specific data sets that would be a special request, that's not done by standard, but the techniques are available to integrate this if you want.
Okay, we've had one question about if we have data for a specific area. To save the rest of the audience getting bored while we look up specific areas, can I ask that you use the portal to make a request for the areas you're interested in, and we'll get back to you shortly afterwards to tell you what we can offer there. They also ask if the data is recorded in time, so if we can provide historical data as well as current data. And there, the portal for the off-the-shelf data will always show the latest data that we've processed. There may be newer data that we can do that isn't off the shelf, and we may also have in the archives or be able to retrieve imagery to do historical data. Similarly, on the crowdsourced side, if we've got enough data in an area, we can time slice it so we can provide data at whatever time interval is needed. But through the portal for the off-the-shelf side, it's really the latest data that we've processed. Another question we've had, which ties into the crowdsourced bathymetry side, is on the accuracy it can generate. In the presentation, we said we can achieve 0.2 to 0.5 of a meter. And the question is saying how can we validate that, saying it's based on uncalibrated single beam echo sounders. Firstly, the accuracy we get is dependent on the number of tracks we get in an area. Crowdsourced data is generally noisier than data from a professional survey, but a lot of the errors are zero-sum errors. So the more data we get, the more the error size decreases. As regards validating it, we've done work with, for example, ABP and Southampton Water in the UK, with Chaume in France, and also as part of this project. So, for example, we're just doing some work around Guernsey, comparing our data against multi-beam data. And we find from that if we have a sufficiency of data, then we can get that 0.2 to 0.5 meters in coastal water, so up to about 50 meters depth. As the water depth increases, the accuracy decreases it, just because of the accuracy of the depth sounder as much as anything else. And for those of you who are more used to working in IHO survey standards, we can generate IHO order 2 without too much problem. The best we can get to is order 1B, where we have a good body of good quality data. And regarding the calibration, what we do is when somebody signs up to be a logger for us, we get them to go through a calibration process. So we get information like the transducer depth, the separation of the GPS antenna and the depth transducer and so on. And we also do things like speed of sound correction, server side from a speed of sound atlas rather than in situ on the survey vessel. Similarly, we correct for things like squat on the ships and so on. And this might be a good point to pass the mic round, so to speak, and get the other providers of data on the satellite side to talk about the accuracy of their data and how they know it's as good as they say it is. So I'll start over with Knut again, as he's right next to me, and we'll go down the line.
Yeah, thanks again. So I feel responsible for the shallow waters using the optical satellite data. So we in the presentation we gave a statement of 50 centimeter accuracy plus a depth dependent factor of up to 10%. First of all, this depth dependent factor is because there is an increased signal to noise. So this is simply a factor which we have to apply. And these accuracy statements have been validated using validations in different regions, comparing against LiDAR, multi-beam surveys, and so on. So this is obviously a general figure. So, and this is a figure which is valid for the data which are currently in the archive and the off-the-shelf data of the platform. So if you have a highly customized area, perhaps you also have the ability to provide tracks, acoustic tracks, multi-beam tracks, whatever, which are more recent and higher quality. We're very happy to integrate it, to use them to calibrate the model, and finally also to validate the accuracy. So this will be of help, but it's obviously only of help for a very customized area, and if you have in the position to provide this kind of high quality data. So I would pass over to Stefan.
So regarding the accuracy from synthetic aperture radar, I guess we stated it's about 5 meters for our water depths up to 70 meters. And in the end, it's quite similar to what Knut just explained for the more shallow regions. Also, we have validated the algorithms with external data, and we got pretty sure that the data that is currently on the portal can fulfill these requirements. But of course, we can't say that each new acquisition can hold this, but usually you can have several acquisitions, and with the best ones, we can get this quality up to our standards. And then maybe some words on altimetry accuracy. Bernard?
I think that I just would like to add that we are following the same method. So we have validated our data in different areas. But of course, the main challenge is that our data worth is in the areas that there is no data. So here we cannot do anything apart from having some validation in other areas.
Yeah, just a side note here. That's a very good point, Bernard. One of the strengths which I'd like to mention is this really provides you the ability to create and get access to bathymetric data where there is no or very, very much outdated data. And there are quite a lot of areas worldwide where this is the case. And I guess you will know these challenges to access bathymetric data grids.
Yeah, just as a comment to Knut's comment, around Jersey and Guernsey in the Channel Islands, which we've been using as a demonstration. Most people would assume, Central European waters, reasonably well surveyed. Most of the areas around there are lead line data from the 19th century and before. Just about all of the rest is single beam depth sounder before there was GPS or radio positioning aids, so using compass and sextant. So that's a prime example of why there's such a great need for better bathymetry data. Talking about the need for data, we've had a question of if we're planning to do anything over lakes. In principle, there's no reason why not. The thrust of the project has been geared towards the maritime side. There is the issue that instead of using tides, we need to have some sort of water gauge available to use as a reference point, because most lakes, the water level can be quite variable depending on seasonal effects and the amount of water coming in from precipitation and down the rivers and so on. So yes, in principle, if a lot of you feel there's a need for that, let us know and we can look at adding it to what we offer in due course. Another question relates to time. Gentleman who sent it in English isn't his first language, so I think I'm interpreting it correctly in saying that bathymetry changes with time in a lot of areas. So how do we know whether our data is accurate at a given time, and can we create data for different time periods? First thing to say is, with the satellite methods, people get a snapshot at the time of the satellite pass, and that's in the metadata that comes with the bathymetry. With the crowdsourcing, and the other thing, obviously, as I said earlier, with the satellite data is because there's a big archive of imagery. If you want to know how the bathymetry has changed over the last year, they can just dial down some images from a year ago, process that, and do a difference between the two. The crowdsourcing, when there's a fleet of vessels set up in an area logging data, effectively we're getting a continuous resurvey. So it's quite easy for us, again, if we've got enough vessels in an area, to time slice the data. I say enough vessels because the finer we time slice it, the more vessels we need to give us enough tracks to give enough meaningful accuracy in the data sets. So I hope that's answered that question. And we've just had a question on vertical datum and the global tide model. And I'm just reading this as I talk to you. But it's saying that the global tide model takes in bathymetry data itself as input. So is it just a sort of circular self-referential process? I'm going to be totally out of my depth here, but I'm sure Martin won't be. So I'll pass it over to him to explain that in further detail.
Yes. Well, that's a very interesting question. Actually, we've been looking into this in the past because I've had this question before. You're absolutely right that a hydrodynamic model takes in bathymetric data as an input itself. That's actually also why this kind of bathymetry is very useful for the modeling efforts. Now, what we see is that if you look at vertical referencing and the sensitivity to the bathymetric data, this is a lot less than a factor 1, which means that if you have an error of 1 meter in the bathymetry, that the error that you will make in the vertical references is substantially smaller than this. And this depends on the depth of the water. So for the kind of depth that we're talking about, this is typically at least an order 10 smaller. So yes, we're dependent, but we don't expect these uncertainties to dominate in the equation. So there's actually a convergence. So there is some form of recurrency, but this is stable, and it does not dominate the process.
Okay, before we pass the mic on, another one for you.
Okay, fine.
It's from a hydrodynamic modeler, but I think the same question will apply to people involved in habitat mapping, for example, which takes bathymetry as an input. Saying they're running a model on a 100-meter horizontal resolution. Sorry, I should have. Sorry, I should have grabbed the mic first and then pass it back to Martin. So this is from a hydrodynamic modeler, but I think the question also applies to people involved in, say, habitat mapping where bathymetry is an input. And they're saying they run a model on 100-meter resolution. How would this affect costs if we wanted the grid to be on a 100-meter resolution grid, and can we do that? So I'll pass that over to Martin, both from the modeling point of view and also because he's doing the data merging side of things as well.
Well, that's a very nice question. So about the resolution. So a lot of the time people cannot afford to run the model at the 15-meter resolution that we provide by default for all of the area. Now we've tried to come up with a nice compromise where we can provide pre-processed data that then is efficiently available off the shelf. So you can have the data quickly at hand. If you have a special request, especially for a very large area, then we could process and reduce the resolution for a particular area. But for the off-the-shelf data, which increases the efficiency, of course, of purchasing and processing the data, you will have the data more quickly. If it's a large area, just give us an email or request, and we'll get back to you about this.
Okay, well, lots of you obviously thinking of using the data because we've got another question related to people getting their hands on it. And this one's on how long it takes to access the current data. So firstly, the off-the-shelf data, generally speaking, within a working day. We've not yet got all the automation in place, so it's still a bit of a manual process. Looking ahead, within a few months, you'll be able to select the area, pop in your credit card details, and immediately download the data. But you have to bear with us for a couple of months till we get there. The custom data depends on the area size. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly pass the mic around and get each of the data providers to talk about their own side. So beginning with us on the crowdsource side, if we've not got the data off the shelf, it can take a significant amount of time to recruit vessels and to get them contributing enough data to do something useful. So with us, you're talking 3 months if you've got a fleet of vessels we can equip with loggers, 6 months if we're starting from scratch. But once that's in place, we then get the continuous resurvey from the fleet. So I'll pass you over to Norton. Norton, if you can talk about the processing time and also the selection of images and so on from your side.
Yep. So for the customized data, so if we got a request for data where we don't have any archive data, first of all, we do a feasibilities check, which means we check the which archive data are available, check for effects of turbidity and so on. So what you will receive from us then is a result of this feasibility assessment, providing you information about the coverage which you can expect from using optical satellite data, and obviously of costs as well. Then following this, a typical turnaround time for a project using optical satellite data, I would say is in between 1 to 3 weeks for an average size project. The fastest project ever we have done was 24 hours, but I guess we don't want to repeat this. And obviously it's depending on size. So if you are speaking about huge areas, it will increase. Yeah.
Yes, for radar data, this is rather similar. We also expect a time of a few weeks. This is mainly because we need also to check the archived satellite images and also the new ones. However, for satellite data, we require long swell waves, which that depends on the area. They can be rather seasonal, so we might have to look back like a few months or so. But else the working time is about the same. So some weeks and we can get the data to you.
Yes, for us it's the same, and the process is highly automated. So basically, we're spending between 2 and 3 weeks just doing the quality review of all the data that we are going to provide, and for areas of several UTMs. So we are not so restricted according to the size of the area.
Okay, we've had another question about whether we can provide data for rivers. At the moment, as I say, the emphasis has been on maritime, so we've really only looked at estuaries and entrances to waterways. So, for example, if you look at the free data set, there's the Waddensee, which is the entrance to the River Elbe, is where we're taking, and that's feeding into, I won't try and say the German word, but the German Inland Waterways Authority. And I'm sure Stefan will be able to provide the proper German word for those of you who need it. But in principle, again, we can do rivers with some of the sources. So obviously, the altimetry won't work. It's just not high enough resolution. But SAR and the Waddensee, they've been using a slightly different method, which I'll get Stefan to talk about. And from our point of view, again, we can do rivers if there's boats there, but the main issue, as always, is there has to be some sort of water level gauge so that we have a reference datum. So let me pass you over to Knut.
Yeah. So I think I can summarize this for all the technologies from the satellite data. So rivers are obviously in areas of high interest because of high vessel traffic and so on, but it's also a very challenging area. So there is not one reference datum such as lowest astronomical tide, which we can apply here on the offshore area, which means even if we are technically feasible to derive information on water depths, we might still have, or we will still have the challenge to refer to a specific datum. And on rivers, it's typically given in height above geoid or ellipsoid or so. And this is something which we don't derive from the process which we apply so far, which means you must have good information, good density information of water level readings for different points of your river in order really to apply it. So my reply would be, in generally, I would not recommend that satellite data can be great help for being applied to rivers, but obviously there can be exceptions if you are well stuffed with other survey data which can support the work. Yeah.
Okay. Related to the last question, really, is a question on surveying in estuaries, how we can provide the data and how accurate it is. The question is actually specifically asking about satellites, but I'll just sneak in a bit on the crowdsourcing side. Again, we can provide estuary data without any problem. And from our point of view, it's one of the areas where crowdsourcing is most effective, partly because very often there's a high density of vessels, whether it's workboats or commercial shipping or leisure craft, that can be contributing to data. And secondly, because we have this continuous resurvey and a lot of estuaries, the seabed's fairly fluid and mobile, we can track changes in the seabed quite easily. But now I'll pass it over to Knut and to Stefan to talk about the satellite side in estuaries.
Yeah, it somehow refers to one of the first questions. So if river estuary is turbid all the year and there is no reflection of the seafloor, you will not be able to use optical satellite data really to derive this bathymetric grids which we have presented here. Often there is a seasonal pattern, which means in dry seasons, for example, you have less turbidity, you are able to detect shoals, and you can then apply this technique. Another method is if you have high ranges of tides. So if your tide range is gives you quite a lot of information about the intertidal region, you are able to derive this tidal line, the land and water level for a specific time, and connect this to height information and to a specific datum using the models, and so allow you to get information of the tidal region. Yeah. Stefan, do you have anything to add? Or?
I can quickly talk because Tim mentioned the Elbe estuary in the German Wadden Sea, which is also one of our use cases, where we applied a slightly different method with SAR. In the Wadden Sea, you have tidal flats, so areas that are dry for certain times of the day and are flooded for other times of the day. And in this case, we can take a combination of different satellite acquisitions in which we determine the land-water line for each one. And because we know the water level at each point, thanks to the water level modeling, we can then reconstruct the topography or bathymetry in this area. But I'm afraid this is one of the rare cases, the Elbe estuary, where we can really use our SAR techniques for rivers and estuaries. Where SAR can be good and easily used is for flooding areas, which is usually also near rivers. But then it's really to determine which regions are flooded and which are not. But I don't see any way to then give the symmetry or the water depth in these areas.
Okay, we've had another question about data coverage, asking if the data we provide is worldwide. We cover the whole world, but we haven't got data for the whole world is the short answer. So what I'll do is get everybody to comment on the ease of providing data in different situations, so you have a better idea of things like turbidity and sea state and so on. But before doing that, just overall, within the portal at the moment, we've got those 4 trial areas, which is open data. So we've got the Wadden Sea, the Channel Islands, Mauritius, and the Balearics. So that you can download and do whatever you want with the data, which is useful if you want to assess it as well and play around with it. We're also building up a body of data from our various sources covering different areas. So, for example, we're just in the process of adding Northwest Australia to the data areas. Now coming on to the specifics, from our point of view on the crowdsourcing, we've got a fleet of a few hundred vessels that are tracking data directly for us. We also ingest data from other sources, so from the Open Sea Map initiative, from the IHO's research vessel database and so on, and bring all them into process. So we've probably got the most extensive coverage of the ones that operate in shallower waters at the moment. But there are big gaps because, as I say, it's where the vessels go. But if you have any vessels that could contribute to this, then get in touch and we can sort out how we can easiest get data off you, and you can help fill in some of those gaps. So I'll pass you over to Nutan.
Yep, thank you. Just to make it clear, there are these 2 ways. One is the already archived data, which you can directly access and purchase through the geo-portal. And then the other one is the one where there are no data and you can request to access this data and create a quotation. So typically there are obviously areas where optical satellite data are very good, of a very good help to provide bathymetric data, which are the water conditions which have very clear water conditions. So like the Gulf region, the Red Sea, or the Caribbean or so. So these are the areas where it's relatively easy to provide bathymetric grids. And in the off-the-shelf data set in the GeoStore, you will, for example, find the Persian Arabian Gulf covered with data. But as I explained before, we are finally affected by turbidity. So there are regions like, let's say, the Mekong River Delta or so, where I'm not very positive that the turbidity would allow us to provide bathymetric grids. But in all cases, I would strongly recommend just provide us an area. We do the feasibility check if it's not already archived, and provide you all the information which you need then to decide if it's a valuable data set for you or not. Worldwide coverage, any comments?
So basically, altimetry is complementing all the other shallow water technologies. So we are providing data with world coverage, but far from the coast, 20 kilometers. So, and we don't have any restriction on optical turbidity and so on.
Well, maybe for SAR, in theory, we can cover many coastal areas of the world. However, some of them, of course, are protected from long ocean swell waves, let's say by islands that are usually in front of these waves and blocks them. So we are limited then to these areas that are really exposed to open ocean waters, which have quite of a fetch region in front of them, and where swell waves occur. And it's best if they occur for us regularly.
Okay. We are getting through the questions quicker than they're coming in now. So if you have any more questions that you want to ask publicly, don't feel shy. Send them in. If there's anything that you want to discuss in a more private domain, of course, feel free to send us an email and we'll get back to you if you have anything specific. We've had two related questions, one on updates to the data sets and the other one on the license that the data is released under. Regarding updates for the off-the-shelf data, basically within the portal, you get the most recent data that we've processed. And you'll see when you select the data set when it was created. You also get that in the metadata that comes with each bathymetry file, which gives more details about that sort of thing. We don't, as out of the standard off-the-shelf data set, offer an update service. Or as I've said earlier, we don't offer different times, but we can do that as a non-off-the-shelf service if that's of interest to you. Then on the license side, the use case, the trial areas that we've got, as I've said, are on open data. You can do what you want with them. You can use them internally. You can post them up on the web. You can include them in your products, whatever. The standard license for data, whether you get it through the off-the-shelf data sets or we produce it specifically for you, is that it's for internal use, so you're not allowed to resell it or to publish it in a product of yours. If you want to do that, we can discuss that with you, and we're always keen to get our data out in as many ways as possible. It's just not covered by the standard off-the-shelf license. But we're flexible and open, so if you have any specific requirements, come to us, and I'm sure we can accommodate you on that. Let me just see if any other questions have come in. I think that's pretty much it. What I'll do, I'll just talk for a little bit on the crowdsourcing recruitment process, if any of you have access to vessels that can participate, and that'll give a last chance for any other questions to come in. So if any of you have any vessels, if you go to the TeamServe website, teamserve.com, we can help you with data loggers, with ways of getting data out of your navigation systems and so on, and sending that in to us. And if you've been aware of the IHO's crowdsourcing work that's going on at the moment, we've been an active participant in that, so we'll also be giving you the opportunity of uploading your tracks to their portal when that becomes available. So I think that looks as though that's all of the questions coming in. So I'll thank you for all of those. It's been an interesting discussion, and I'll pass you over to do the final bit.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for spending the time with us. So just a few final notes. So the webinar is recorded. You will be able to watch it online on YouTube. There will be a new link, so you will not be able to use this link which you have used now. We will provide you with the email providing this information. And obviously, if you have any further questions, if you want to come into contact with us, feel very free to go to the website, send us an email, and yeah, just run through what we discussed today. So just to summarize how easy really it is to get into contact, just go to the website, to the portal, select your areas, just for you to get a feeling of what's possible in your specific area. Assuming there's data coverage, you will know it right now. Otherwise, we'll come back to you and discuss with you what we can provide to you. So thank you very much for participating today, and have a nice day. Thank you.